Hey everybody, Jenae, Spry, growth strategist and productivity expert and founder of this Doer Entrepreneurs community. And today we are talking about what happens when systems are wasting your time, how to figure out if they are wasting your time, and then how to set systems up that don't waste your time. So if that sounds good, stick right here and let's get going here, guys. So the first thing I want to talk about is this. The more complex your system is, the more likely it is to waste your time. And the really important thing that I want to talk about here is that a lot of people overcorrect when it comes to systematizing their businesses. So starting simple is going to be so important, because no matter how good you are at planning, things are going to go wrong, and you need to leave that space to be able to pivot, to be able to change things around. That is going to be really important. And that is why you really want to keep things simple. Too many steps is going to set you up for failure. So as an example, if you guys are doing time blocking, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I will link that video up that I did a few weeks ago above this one. And hopefully you've also been analyzing that. But one mistake people make is setting up way too many time blocks, right? Being like so detailed. And so they end up in this like super rigid schedule that's basically ridiculous and no human can stick to it. And then they're like, well, you know, it doesn't work. Time blocking doesn't work. And the fact is that you just overcomplicated, right? You just made a really complex system for yourself to stick to. So what ends up happening is you either ignore it completely, or, you know, you decide it doesn't work, or you just really struggle. So I'm going to talk about some step-by-steps for you for both creating and analyzing those systems. But first, realize that you really do need to analyze new systems very frequently. I would say at least once a week, or depending on what it is, maybe even more frequently. But you really need to keep that in mind. And don't be afraid to make changes, okay? So that's part of the awesome part of analyzing, is that you can figure out what changes you need to make, tweak those things, and really optimize it and make it work for you. So you can figure out like, oh, this is too complex, need to dial it back, or maybe it's too simple and it's time to add more complexity. And then so important, do not forget to onboard your system. There is going to be a period, read my lips, there is going to be a period where the system is not more productive, and that's normal. So that's just you and your team getting used to the system. It's going to allow you to find the issues and fix them. And if you're not regularly checking in on those systems and verifying their efficacy, then you're not going to know when to pull the plug or when to fix something, right? A lot of things don't work right out of the gate. So if your system includes hiring team members, you know, keep in mind that you want to leave space to onboard the person, just like you want to onboard the system. So if you have experience onboarding people already, you know that you don't just hire them and then drop a mess in their lap and expect them to make sense of it, right? You give them one task and you show them how that works, or one aspect and you show them how that aspect works. And then you show them the next thing and the next thing until they master the entire job or the entire system that you're building. Same thing if you're outsourcing. Instead of to a person, you are putting this into a tool. You don't just hire the tool and then expect it to like work magic, right? You need to have a system in place before you get the tool. All right. So you have to sort of create a system that's going to work and then implement it into a tool. Tools are not magic, as much as I wish they were. And a lot of times it feels like they are, but really they're not. So really important to remember. All right. Next thing is also really important. Verify system step 1 before step 10. And what I mean by that is, and it's really common in systems like sales funnels, where somebody's going through like a specific process, they're opting into something and then they get served something else and so on. And I've even made this cardinal mistake myself. I built out this super cool sales funnel. It was so awesome. And I'll be honest, part of why I did it and why I got lost in this is because I just really like to build these things. So I got a little carried away and I forgot this really important piece of advice that I give myself. And it only turned out that it was cool to me because it didn't work. And I spent all that time and it was so complex and it didn't work, right? Because the earlier steps didn't work. And I took my own advice, built something that was super simple, and then guess what? It worked, right? So it's really important to remember this. And you want to really make sure that you have the least number of steps possible for several reasons. For a sales system, obviously if people don't enter step 1, the rest of them don't matter. But not all systems or sales systems are set up that way. So for other systems, you want to think about your minimum viable system. And if you remember anything from this video, I really want you to take a screenshot of this slide or remember this slide, write this slide down, because this is really the key. You need a minimum viable system to start. Systems should always be solving a problem. So what problem is that? So for example, Inbox Zero, that's a system created to solve the problem of email clutter. I don't really use that system, and I happen to think that it's actually really complex and as a result wastes more time than it saves. And I think it's a little bit more emotional in terms of that feeling of clearing out your inbox than it is an actual time saver, but that's just me. A lot of people love it, and that brings me to another point, which is that complexity is relative. And sometimes things seem really complex to one person, and somebody else, it works perfect. So you have to figure out what that balance is for you. And then for any current system, you want to ask yourself, what problem does the system actually solve that I'm using? And it might be a sales system, so it helps create sales, right? It might be an email system or an invoicing system, so it manages email. It helps you send invoices. But you'd be surprised how many people just get lost in creating so many steps and so many complexities that they actually forget the problem that they built the system to solve in the first place, or that they've been trying to solve in the first place. So they'll say something like save time, right? When that's really sometimes can be an arbitrary factor. So you want to figure out what that is before you build a system. And if you've already built it, then do these steps in order. Just start over with an analysis. What problem is the system solving? And the next one. So the next step is you're going to define how you know when the system is working. So what is your key performance indicator for the system? Most people's go-to is spend less time on insert X, right? So then my question would be, how do you know if you're spending less time? Are you timing yourself every time you work on that task? And if you're not, then how on earth are you going to figure out when you're saving time, right? Side note to this, I'm going to link up 2 tools above. One is ClickUp again, because it does have a time tracking feature as well. And then you can also use Toggle, which is one I've been using for a lot longer. And Toggle, I've only ever used the free version of that, so I'll link that above for you as well. But these are really good ways. You can just click the button when you're trying to focus on something, like even if it's email clutter and you're just trying to work on that, then time yourself so you can know what your baseline is and then what your change from baseline is, so you know when the system's working or if it's not working. And then again, plan that onboarding phase into this. Realize that it's not going to be productive immediately, and you have to onboard systems, whether that is electric, whether it's digital and it's like a tool, whether it is just steps on a piece of paper, or whether it's actually onboarding team members. In all cases, there's going to be a period where it's a little bit less productive and it feels like a little bit more work than it did before, than whatever you were doing before, right? So you don't want to fall into that trap of like, I hired this person, now I'm working twice as much, and not give that person a chance to actually learn what they're supposed to do and become onboarded so that then you can step away. There's going to be that overlap period. And the same is true for any system that you implement or build. So these are the 3 ways to both build and also analyze any current system that you're using. So again, screenshot this slide, write these down. I did not build a worksheet for this one, but if you would like me to, let me know that in the comments and I can definitely do that. But either way, write this down. And now I just want to review really quickly some key takeaways here, which are: remember why you are implementing the system. Okay, what goal is it supposed to achieve? And then keep it simple, okay? Minimum viable system. What is the minimum number of steps? What is the minimum amount of time? What is the minimum complexity that you can use for this system to make your life easier, to make your business run better? And then how are you know that happened, right? What is your performance indicator? When is it considered working or not working, right? Sometimes you have to throw it out and start over. And then last but not least, do not forget that onboarding process. Whether it involves team members, whether it involves only tools, there is going to be an onboarding process and there's going to be that overlap. It is not going to work overnight, ever, okay? So there's going to be that period. So it's important to remember that. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me, and I appreciate you watching this really short video. If you watched, leave me a comment below and let me know, say hi. I am definitely monitoring those and checking those out, so I would love to see some comments below. Thanks, guys.